Hey everyone, I'm Adrian. I'm the founder over at The Proof, and I'm here with Steph.
Hey guys, I'm the founder of Levitate Foundry, and we're here today with my friend Jason, the co-founder of 88 Rising and principal of Triller. Hey Jason, how's it going?
I'm chilling. How you guys doing?
Good.
Pretty good. Yeah, Jason, so to kick things off, first, just give us a quick rundown. I know you have a varied background, but if you want to distill that into like a quick 2 minute chunk, then we can start there.
Sure. Name's Jason Ma. I'm a serial entrepreneur as well as a venture capitalist. I've been in the game for quite a long time, 2 decades. Started in San Jose, mainly starting in venture capital with my old boss and mentor, MC Hammer. And then from there, I got into venture. He was best friends with a guy named Ron Conway, who kind of invented the term angel investment with SB Angels. And I always said that Hammer wanted to be cool. No, Hammer wanted to get to tech, and Ron wanted to be cool. So they became bosom buddies. But anyway, so that's where I got my start. And then from there, ended up going into missions. I know it sounds random. And then starting a bunch of companies in the media entertainment space between East and West. And so a company called PCA and Adventures.tv, which kind of launched the careers of Far East Movement, and Jin on MC Jin in his debut into Hong Kong and then China. I had a short stint where I paid Bruno Mars $1,500 for 4 songs to feature on my tracks. Believe it or not, I have 4 songs with Bruno Mars. And then from there, I started East West Ventures. Basically, we're a investment firm focusing on talent, IP, content, consumer products, and consumer tech. We've done about $1 billion in transaction as an advisory. Also, as a venture firm, we've invested over 20 companies. And then from there, started 88 Rising back in 2015. And then from there, started Stampede Ventures with Greg Silverman, former president of Warner Brothers, our film studio with Gideon Yu, former CFO of Facebook and YouTube. And then got lucky with a few investments, invested in Musical.ly, which then got acquired by ByteDance, became TikTok. And then 2019 completed a merger and acquisition with my partners at Proxima Media, Ryan and Bobby, as well as a family office we work very closely called WTT in Taiwan. Merged a company called Mass that I discovered out of London, which is a music editing AI tool, and created the second Triller 2.0, which is now, created its own brand, platform, and life of its own. Super, super proud of what's been built in the last, 18 months since acquisition. And then recently acquired Low Motive, another company in the space, social video interactive platform based out of Singapore with our new public entity called Zash, and a bunch of other random stuff that I'm doing. So that's that.
You've invested in so many interesting companies, and obviously Musical.ly is now a huge hit. When you're investing in these early stage brands and media companies, what is the specific criteria you're looking for in terms of your potential investment?
Um, Most of the time it's really about disruption. And so for me, it's being a gatekeeper in a white space that no one has endeavored to really disrupt. And so I don't really look at companies that kind of increase effectiveness by like 20% or 25% or 30%. Higher white space. I'm looking at a company right now that's going to be the nifty gateway top shot for music. And I think, as we're talking about all this madness in NFT world, I think they could be a first mover and really go in and be a marketplace. So I look at companies in that way. When I saw Musical.ly, it was similar. It was like there's nothing like it. It wasn't Instagram. It wasn't Snap. It was, little kids doing little karaoke, dances and tunes. And it was just something that was completely new. And that's what caught my attention. And then when I saw Triller, it was similar, right? It was still early, but it was similar to TikTok. It was similar to TikTok and Musical.ly, but it was very much focused on urban and the hip hop community, and saw that as also another massive white space that was not tapped, and so went into that as well. So that's normally how I think. It's normally about disruption, being a gatekeeper in a very specific space, and doing something that is completely unique and different.
Yeah, and I feel like, obviously music is a big passion. You've done a lot in sort of the music space. So I feel like Musical.ly was a no-brainer for you. Music with tech,
Yeah.
two big passions, right? What about founders? How do founders come into play? Do you look at founders? Have you ever invested based on a founder or a gut or intuition?
I think I always base my investments on the founder. So, there's times where I won't even need to see a business plan, right? But I just know that this person's going to win. And so I'll just write the check. I did that recently with a friend of mine. She was a top VC and her partner was the top engineer at a major, conglomerate social media platform that we all know. And I didn't have to think twice. I was like, I know she knows what she's doing. He knows what he's doing. To this day, I haven't seen a business plan. To this day, there isn't a deck. To this day, all I have was a safe term sheet signed and wired, right? And I believe they're going to kill it. They already are.
Love it. What trends have caught your eyes recently in the modern digital media landscape? Content, e-commerce, music. What are you looking at these days?
All the above. I mean, for me, it's always about content and technology. That's my, expertise. Is I come from a media, entertainment, content background, but I also come from a venture capital, consumer tech background. And so anything that has to do with tech, has to do with data, has to do with something that is what I call content is king, but I also say that distribution is emperor, right? And to me, distribution is Netflix, right? As much as they are a content company, they are first and foremost a tech company. And they built it, out of Silicon Valley. And they were the first to go truly OTT and in streaming on demand in a way that was robust, that was UI, UX wise, an incredible experience. But all of it's leveraged by data, right? They are making their bets based on data. And I think in that understanding, it was like Hammer when we first started in 1997. He was like, Jason, Hollywood's going down, music industry's going down, rich content, digital distribution, Hollywood's coming up, Silicon Valley. And I'm like 17 years old. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, we're laying fiber optics, OPC. And we're like literally going to like Global Crossing and MCI. And we were talking about Netflix before Netflix, but literally delivering rich content and data over fiber, right, direct to your mobile tablet or mobile device at that time. And who would have thought 20 years later, well, the prophecy and prediction is not just absolutely true, is the reality that we live in today, that the major studios are no longer the major studios. It's no longer about Paramount or Warner Brothers or Fox or even Disney. They're all going tech, right? But who owns them and who has bigger valuations than they do? I call them the Death Stars. It's Facebook, it's Amazon, it's Apple, it's Netflix, it's Google, that all have $250 to $500 billion valuations or more. And you're still looking at these studios with, let me look at Viacom. It's like barely 10 billion valuation. It's not even a drop in the bucket, right? And 15 years ago, Viacom, and Summer Redstone was king of the world, king of media. Well, Viacom no longer has a seat at the table.
I know, crazy how the big tech companies are taking over everything. Media, entertainment, obviously tech, social media, the way we interact, eat, buy things, consume content, everything. How do you feel about that?
It's just a reality that we live in. And I think COVID and the pandemic just accelerated all that, right? We probably wouldn't be having this podcast and this Zoom, if it wasn't for a pandemic, you know what I'm saying? Because everyone's sitting at home and, no one, knows what else to do but to connect virtually now online. Whereas before, for you guys to do this podcast, you would have thought, well, we got to raise, I don't know, $50,000. We got to go find a studio. We need to go, get microphones. We need to go find a mixing engineer. We need to go get a space somewhere in LA that's cool and deck it out, make it Joe Rogan, right? Nah, everything got fast tracked, right? And here we are. It doesn't matter. You're in your couch, you're in your living room, and I'm right here in my little loft, right, in Century City, having a podcast, right? And content is now made effective and simple and cost effectively very low. And so that's why TikTok's blown up, Triller's blown up, Lomoto's blown up, right? All these content companies that are user generated content, that's the reality we live in. Look at Clubhouse, right? I mean, would Clubhouse be Clubhouse without the pandemic? Probably not, right? And here we are. So we live in a completely new world now. The world has come. To be honest, I was barely ordering Amazon Prime and Amazon Fresh before the pandemic. I was still brick and mortar. Let's go to Whole Foods, right? I am ordering Amazon Prime every 3 hours. Okay. Shit, I need duct tape. Damn. You know what I'm saying? Like, I need water. Like, you know, it's just crazy, right? Like everything switched over in a matter of 12 months or less. And this is the reality that we live in, and this is how we're going to consume. And then we're like millennials. Like, can you imagine the Gen Z kids and the kids, Gen Alpha, like these 5, 6-year-olds? I mean, like, they're on Roblox 24/7. They probably believe their Roblox avatar is the real them versus themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the generation that's coming up right now, and it's completely virtual and completely digital.
Completely digital. I just hired a bunch of Gen Zs to my team, which just recently went remote. As you know, I run a e-commerce agency, and it's so interesting to see them work. They're so much more productive, and they're used to this environment versus a lot of the older people on my team. They're like, oh, this is a new thing, working from home, just getting adapted. Are we still going to have an LA office? Like, what's the dealio? But man, all the Gen Z people I've hired recently, they're on it. Like, they just go.
Yep.
Natural for them. So.
Jason, I'm curious from a workload perspective, whether you're investing, advising, hands-on building, is it all kind of a blur, or are you like divvying up specific days or weeks that you're working on one thing?
It's a bit of all. Again, as you said, it is a blur. It's also very intentional. It is also very organized. You know, I'm literally in 30-minute, 60-minute increments. So, you know, most of the time, if it's a general call or just a catch-up call, you know, it'll be a 30-minute, sometimes less. And then if it's more of something I have to dive into, like diligence or whatnot, or digging into the details ops-wise, then, you know, I'll take an hour call. But if I look at my schedule today, literally, it will start at 7 a.m. with the first Clubhouse event with me, Greg Silverman, Dimitri Vegas, all the way to 8 p.m. tonight, before my dinner, my work dinner. And it's literally on the hour, by the hour, you know, without a break. So, you know, I think it's interesting because now you are more effective in the sense of having more efficiency to take more meetings because you're not traveling physically, right? Whether in a car or on a plane or on a train. At the same time, it can become overwhelming if you are not staying focused and just taking meetings versus, you know, meetings that you really, really, really need to take. But I will say that I've got more deals done in the pandemic 12 months than in probably any year of my entire career. You know, it's just been slaying, you know, closing deal after deal after deal after deal, because now I don't have to fly to Taiwan to get a deal done. I don't have to fly to Beijing. I don't have to fly to London. It's like people expect to see you on a Zoom versus back in the day, it was like, okay, you want to close that deal? Well, let's find a time to meet in London or Hong Kong or New York. And it's like, okay, let's figure that out. And then you fly somewhere 3 weeks later, 3 months later, and it's like you just got to meeting number 2, right? Versus now it's like bam, 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 bam. And I don't think it'll really go back, you know, because I think we all realize we're not stupid, right? We all learn and we recognize if something's more effective, why are we trying to change it and trying to go backwards into something that's archaic and dinosaur?
Yeah, no more excuses. Get shit done now. So
correct.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Jason, how did you find yourself in this predicament, in this career, in this situation?
You know, we have this clubhouse with me and Greg Silverman and my partner Stampede. We call it Inside Outsiders. And the reason for that name is because we were all from the outside that somehow got on the inside, right? I'm not supposed to be where I am. I'm not supposed to be doing what I'm doing. I did not have an internship at Goldman Sachs, New York. I did not graduate from Stanford, although Greg did, but his story is different. He thought he was going to be a Goldman Sachs banker, graduated from Stanford, but then he loved movies and he basically went against everyone's expectations and wishes, even his own, and he started cutting fruit on a Warner Brothers set. And 22 years later, he was president of Warner Brothers, right? And so he came from the outside in many ways myself, right? Starting with venture capital, and then from there, somehow getting to like third world, you know, Christian missionary work in 40 countries over almost 5 years, and then somehow flipping the switch and getting into the music industry, and then the film industry, and then back into content, back into tech, back into investing, and then now public markets and M&A and SPACs and God knows what else is coming, right? You know, life is like a box of chocolates, and you really don't know what you're gonna get. But I will say that I'm thankful, and I do think that somehow, some way, your childhood dreams and desires that you scribble on a piece of paper sometimes do come true. And those desires are not random or wrong, right? Like when I was 7, I drew a white piece of paper when Dad asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I drew 3 pictures of myself. One was me in a suitcase with a suitcase and a tie and a suit. And second was me in a French Pierre cap and a paintbrush and a paint palette. And the third was me behind a pulpit in a church preaching. And my dad's like, "What is this?" I'm like, "Well, dude, Monday through Friday, I'm going to be a businessman like you, Dad. And Saturday, I'm going to be an artist. And Sunday, I'm going to be a preacher." And, it all happened, but not in the way that I thought it was going to happen, right? My careers in each of those roles or those journeys. And so how it all happens, who knows, right? But a lot of times I feel like I'm Joe Black. Like, I don't know why I'm in the room. I'm not supposed to be there, but I am. And I'm just thankful, and I just try to breathe it all in and take it all in and make the most of it.
Yeah. I know your faith is a big part of who you are. How do you think that's really helped you on your journey? And has that impacted or affected the businessman Monday through Friday?
If anything, I think it helps, lay a foundation. I still remember when, I was wanting to go after MC Hammer had invested in Better Luck Tomorrow. Justin Lin's film, inspired me towards what I'm doing now, which is bridging East and West through media, entertainment, and tech, through stories and talent. And I told him I wanted to leave Hollywood. I wanted to leave venture, and I wanted to go to Hollywood. I want to get my master's in film and television at UCLA or USC and represent Asian culture and mainstream media. That was my original mission. That's what I thought God had called me to. And then I told my Chinese pastor at the little Chinese church I was at in San Jose. And I said, I feel like God's calling me to Hollywood. And he said, "That's definitely not God. That's the devil talking to you." And he was like, "You are not going to Hollywood. You are called to go to Bible college and seminary, and then we're going to support you. God is calling on your life to do mission work." And I was like, "You got to be kidding me." And I rejected it. I did not want to hear it. I thought he was insane. And I went back to Hammer because he was obviously my mentor, and I used to call him pastor because he was also a minister, and he was also an artist. He's also a businessman. Couldn't have had a better mentor in my life. And I said, "Pastor, what should I do?" I remember 4 a.m. we're in the studio in Fremont, California, and he was like, "Jason, Hollywood's always going to be there. If you go to Hollywood in the spiritual state or condition you're in right now, those demons will eat you up. You won't come out alive." He said, "If I were you, lay a strong spiritual foundation, build your character, do God's work, serve the poor. And if God calls you back to Hollywood, it'll still be there. Don't worry about it. I've been there, done that." And that was probably the best advice I could ever have at whatever age I was, 21, 22. And so I deep dive, dropped everything, and went into mission work, went to 40 countries, started over 300 missions on universities and third world countries and, just impoverished areas, working with young people. And it was an amazing, amazing experience. And when you are in the depths of some crazy, abandoned, isolated island, in Indonesia, or you're in the Himalayas in Nepal, and you're literally sleeping on a rock, and you have nothing, but you're absolutely blessed, and you're incredibly happy, and you see what people don't have, and are still thankful. And about what I can do for them is more what they could do for me. And so you have that foundation of just realizing the world is not about technology, and it's not about all these gizmos and gadgets and all these things that we want and wear. The world is really just about being thankful and being grateful and loving the community that you have, and having that foundation going into a place like Hollywood or the Silicon Valley, whatever you want to call it, mafia, or Wall Street, or the jungles, concrete jungles of Hong Kong and Shanghai and Tokyo, keeps you grounded. Because you realize, we're all just human. Some people die with more, some people die with less. And a lot of the times that has nothing to do with what you own, asset-wise. It's really about the assets that you carry in your heart.
The assets you carry in your heart. I love that. That's so, I'm going to have that written down somewhere. The assets you carry in your heart. So is it safe to say that your faith keeps you humbled and grounded? Because it is pretty hard to stay grateful living in Century City in Los Angeles. I've been living there for 7 years. It's all the hustle and bustle and entertainment and the what can you do for me vibes, you know, of what is basically Southern California? How do you stay grateful?
I think, you know, who you surround yourself with, right, determines who you are. And I do think that if you know, you hang with pigs, you'll act like a pig. You know, if you hang with eagles, you're going to fly and soar with the eagles, right? And so, you know, and it comes through a lot of trial and error. I've met a lot of bad people. I've met a lot of, when I say bad, I don't think anyone's, well, there are certain people I think are intentionally bad, like Evel Knievel's, but I think certain people are just broken, right? And when people are broken, you know, they're motivated by fear, they're motivated by insecurity, they're motivated by, you know, anger or spite or rejection or bitterness or whatever it is, right? Pain. And that obviously manifests itself in unhealthy ways. And so, you know, for me, I've had business partners that have screwed me. I've had people that have tried to, you know, take me down multiple times, all the time still. You know, I have a lot of enemies. There's a lot of people that don't like Jaeson Ma. You bring up my name and it's a polarizing name, right? Some people be like, I love him. Some people are like, fuck him, right? So, you know, but that just comes with the territory. To me, if you're not doing something significant, if you're not living out the purpose that you've been called to do, and you don't have people that hate you, that means you're probably not doing anything actually significant. And so, you know, I think anyone that is actually creating change and creating something that is meaningful, that has impact in this world, will always encounter hate and negativity. But who do you surround yourself with, right? Do you surround yourself with yes people that just kind of, you know, pour in and encourage your vices for you, versus the people that are constantly challenging you, that are honest with you? True friends, right? That will tell you like it really is and call you out when you're being an asshole or an idiot or an egomaniac, or, you know, someone that's just, you know, ill-willed and questioning your intentions, right? And I think those are the type of people that you have to constantly surround yourself with. And if you don't have those type of people, then I would advise that you get real with yourself and ask yourself, you know, who do you want to become, and look at people that you want to be like. And surround yourself with those type of people of integrity, honesty, and virtue. But yeah, I mean, I think it is a lot about your accountability and community. It's also about having me time or your time. You know, getting alone. Every year, I spend, you know, the first week of the year. I normally spend like the 27th through at least January 3rd, the first week after Christmas into the New Year by myself. And people are like, what do you don't want to go to like a New Year's party? You don't want to have a countdown? You don't want to have like a mistletoe kiss? I'm like, nah, I just need to make sure every year I'm reflecting, correcting, and becoming a better version of myself. Right. And I think that is super, super key. And if you can't be alone with yourself, that's a problem, because people really don't like being alone. Right? Because we have to face ourselves, the ugly, good, bad, and everything in between. For me, I've gotten very comfortable with just being alone. And because when you're alone, you know, there's no one there to clap hands or pat you on the back and tell you how great you are and how awesome you are and like your Instagram post or your TikTok meme or whatever, right? It's like just you, yourself, and God, and you answer to him. So
I love that. I agree with you. I mean, I feel like most people can't be alone because they can't look at themselves in the mirror or face themselves. So do you remember like the defining moment when you started feeling happy being alone?
You know, it's interesting because, you know, I always kind of was alone. I grew up in a broken family. My mom was, you know, chronically depressed. My dad was not really there. You know, I really was independent, you know, growing up. You know, always had to kind of create my own Peter Pan world and like figure out how to survive.
Yep.
I think through my early, I would say, spiritual formation, you know, I learned how to meditate, and I learned how to what we call waiting on the Lord, or waiting prayer. It's a very, what they call a Christian mysticism, or it's like there's old books like St. John the Cross and Madame Jean Guyon, but it was like these Catholic saints, right, that would spend years like alone, right, and would practice being silent, right, in my conversion. So when I was like 18, 19, 20, I started getting deep into this. In the midst of being involved with venture capital, I would be spending 2 to 4 hours meditating on my own every day, right? And that's how I would start my day, right? And then from there, everything else would kind of happen. And for me, it's kind of what I call centering, right? If you don't have that center and you don't have that equilibrium with yourself, with your body, soul, and spirit on a daily basis, you're just kind of always chasing and always running and always reacting, right? Versus being at the center with yourself, with your higher power, and then looking out into the world every day of, okay, how do I respond, or how do I attack, or how do I act based upon what I know, right? And I think that is very, very important. And so for me, obviously, I don't have that same luxury now that I have so much responsibility. There's kind of less time to be like, oh, I can just have 4 hours to meditate every day. I probably could, right? And I probably should. But, given where I am in my stage in life, I'll still find, the first 10, 15 minutes of the day, sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes an hour, just get alone and be quiet. And of course, once a week, I have that one day where I just do nothing, right? And whether that's a Sunday, for me, some people that could be a Monday for you. But for me, Sundays are sacred. And those days I just stop and I'm reading, I'm listening, I'm meditating, I'm praying, I'm journaling, I'm just taking it all in and then reflecting and getting my perspective right to make sure I don't go off course.
I love that. I love that. Do you have any quick tips for how to meditate productively? Sounds like a dichotomy, right?
I think the problem, there's different types of meditation, right? And I think for some people, it's kind of meditating on nothingness, right? Whereas for myself as a Christ follower, I meditate on Christ and I talk to Christ and I'm with Christ, right? But I think for me, what does help, one is obviously turn off your phone, like literally turn it off, because if it's on and notifications and all that, it's just complete distraction. And that's number one. That's like basic. Like that's just step one, right? Step two is a lot of times just like really great for me, worship music or meditative music that just really kind of gets you in that mode of just kind of being in that feeling of serenity, right? And calm and the environment that you begin to imagine in your mind. So that's number two for me, is like music always really, really helps a lot of the time. And then three, sometimes, whether you're a Buddhist or, you don't believe in a God, or you're religious or non-religious, I normally will find helpful in the beginning when I started meditating was what I call a centering word, right? So finding a word that you start repeating, right, every 10 seconds or every 30 seconds or every minute. So it could be, what's the word that, you're focused on in this season of your life? Maybe for you, it's resilience, right? Or strength or faith or calm, whatever. But just saying that, like resilience, 10 seconds later, resilience. And then it just starts having you start thinking about, right, and focused on one specific word or one specific goal. And sometimes I'll do that with a scripture. I'll do that with a quote or whatever that might be, or sometimes with just an image.
Got it. I'm really curious. When you mentioned, when you were 21, 22, you started diving into a bunch of this. For 21, 22-year-old founders, or creatives, or entrepreneurs, or musicians, what advice, I'm sure they ask you for advice all the time. What advice do you realize yourself starting to give them, or that's repeated in some way, whether it's business advice or life advice?
I always say that in your 20s, right, be a sponge, right? Learn everything you can and make as many mistakes as you can. Try as many ideas as you can and not be afraid to fail, but also learn from someone you respect, right? So if you can find a mentor in your 20s, for me, I was very lucky. I was blessed with MC Hammer, and I literally did everything for him, okay? When I say everything, I'm talking about wiping his kids' diapers, taking them to the baseball games, what I'm saying? Scheduling the meetings, driving him to another destination. Like, it really was everything. And I always say that being a personal assistant or someone's shadow, right? When you're around someone great, you by osmosis capture their greatness, right? And because you just pick things up, not so much by the task, but by observing, right? And I think so much of Western education is not about that, right? You learn in a class versus learning on the job. And I think, wherever you go, whether you're working at McDonald's, but if you have a great manager or a great boss or someone there that acts with integrity, is on time, does what they say, says what they do, right? And you have to pick those things up and be a sponge. What I find is a big problem with a lot of kids that intern for me at multiple companies that I have, they just have bad attitudes. They're lazy, they have excuses, they don't work hard, they're completely ADHD. They're constantly complaining, right? And they think, oh, well, I should be here. And they have expectations, right? Versus having an attitude of gratitude and an attitude of humility that's hungry and constantly wanting to learn, right? And I think the problem is because things are just so easily accessible these days, right? That, kids just think, you know what, I can just be an influencer and I can just be an influencer forever. And I'm just going to make millions of dollars and I'm just going to, just be this amazing, human being. And life just doesn't work that way, right? Life and the world and the universe has principles, right? And the principle is you reap what you sow, right? And what you invest is what you get in return, right? And so if you're not actually putting in that Malcolm Gladwell, Outliers 10,000 hours into your acting craft or into e-commerce or into your coding or into your tennis game or into making hats, I don't know, whatever it is, right? If you don't put the time, focus, and effort into something that you want to be and do, you will never succeed, right? Truly, you might have a luck, but that luck won't sustain you. I always say that the gift will take you there, but it's character that keeps you there, right? And I think that a lot of this generation that I've seen doesn't have that same faithfulness, commitment, loyalty, focus that our parents' generation had, or even our generation as millennials, because we're in like in that transition period between analog and digital, right? But of course, there's incredible advantages, right, that the youth have today, right? They can literally cut through so many corners, right? Like they can just literally live virtually. They don't have to go through the same mistakes. They can be so much more effective and efficient. But if you were able to combine that with I would say universal eternal principles, like work ethic, investment of time, study, right? Mastering your craft, and all the technology and all the AI and all the crypto and all the quant and everything that's going on today, right? Anything is possible.
I love it. Jaeson, that's a perfect place to cut off. Thank you again for doing this. I'm sure we can go for hours, but this has been brilliant.
Well, I'm constantly yelling into the Zoom. I hope you guys are okay with that, but I'm a preacher at heart and entrepreneur during the day. So I appreciate it, guys.
I love it, Jaeson. Keep preaching. I always love chatting with you and hearing your stories. It's amazing.